Hello and welcome to the State of the Fleet Market, a weekly video series produced by Automotive Fleet magazine. I'm Mike Antich, editor of Automotive Fleet, and today I'd like to examine what's occurring in the fleet industry for the week of August 24th. And I talk to a lot of fleet managers around the country, and there are many themes that come up, but a recurring theme that's recently been coming up quite a bit is the possibility of fleet budget cuts. And we've discussed this last week. But fleet managers will tell you that they're under heavy pressure to control costs. Now, this isn't new. I mean, as long as I've been in the business, fleet managers have always been under pressure to control fleet costs. So that's not a new phenomena, but it's in the context of this pandemic. It's in the context of companies having reduced cash flows in a cash conservation mode that it's taking on new intensity in these discussions. But the question is, now you have to execute. If your company decides to do it, now you've got to execute on it. And as I've said in the past, there's not a lot of fleet fat in our budgets. So where do you make these cuts without interfering with fleet optimization, fleet productivity, and so on? So among the areas that fleets are looking at, and I mentioned this last time, was in the area of sustainability. It's not an optimal solution, but it's one that would allow you to scale back a bit, still accomplish it, maybe not at the same level that you want it to, but doesn't interfere with the operational efficiency of a fleet. The other thing is deferring 2021 orders until early in next calendar year. But a new topic has developed that I've been hearing about, and again, it's not a new topic, but it's the area of reimbursement. So some companies now are considering a reimbursement option, or a more reinvigorated reimbursement option, as a way of cutting back on some expenses. Now, the argument and discussion of fleet reimbursement versus company provided vehicle has been going on as long as the industry's been in existence. But again, it's in this current context now that it's kind of resumed additional intensity. And so here are the different ideas being bandied around, and there are a number of companies out there in the fleet business, and there are a number of ideas as to how you can go about doing that. But those that are examining how we can incorporate reimbursement as a cost-cutting tool, some are thinking about, well, what about if we make it an employee option? So rather than an employee automatically getting a company-provided vehicle, is now you give them the option of going to a reimbursement program or taking the company-provided vehicle. Some cases that's already being offered, but some are looking to expand it to their fleet programs that aren't offering it. Another idea that I've heard is temporarily assigning new hires, people that haven't been having the entitlement of having a company car and don't have an entitlement that they should get one, but a new hire, temporarily putting them into a reimbursement program until things kind of settle out a bit. Generally the rule of thumb has been that an employee must drive at least 12,000 annual business miles to be eligible for a company vehicle. But some fleet managers are toying around and doing the calculations. Well, what if we make that criteria a little bit higher? What if we now make it 13,000 or greater business miles annually before you're actually providing a company vehicle? When you're giving a state of the industry in the midst of a pandemic, invariably there's going to be a lot of negative aspects that are going to be covered, but not everything is negative. In fact, there's certain very positive things that have come out of the COVID-19 virus and its resultant pandemic, and that is primarily in the wholesale used vehicle marketplace. That market is literally red hot now, and the other important aspect of the pandemic is it became the catalyst that literally overnight switched the industry over to 100% online sales. Now, we've always had online sales. It's been in conjunction with physical sales, and then there have also been 100% online sales. But the catalyst was the pandemic, where all of the physical auctions closed down and we went to a 100% online sales. And it really developed some comfort level on the part of a lot of dealers that were kind of hesitant in the past on wanting to use that system, now using it. But there are pain points nonetheless, but this would not have occurred if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So when you're looking at the resale market, the number one consideration is always resale prices. And prices now are really good. I mean, I've heard some people say, the prices are actually insane in terms of what people are getting for fleet vehicles. And what's significant about it is that, fleet vehicles don't have a diversity of models out there. I mean, if you look at the individual vehicle segments, cars, trucks, vans, there's usually just 4 or 5 models in there that represent the lion's share. Sometimes it's up to 90% of overall sales to those segments there. But when we talk about pain points, one of the pain points is that a lot of the auctions are still understaffed. And a lot of fleet vehicles are identified with the company name, logo, and that kind of information on the exterior of the vehicle. And these vehicles have to be de-identified prior to them going into the auction for sale. Because of the fact that auctions are short-staffed, this de-identification process is not happening as fast as it once did, and it is delaying some sales that are happening. But the key thing is, the reason that the wholesale used market is kind of on fire at the moment is because inventories continue to be low. But as we've mentioned in past reports, there is an anticipation that there will be a larger influx of used vehicles entering the wholesale market, from off-lease vehicles to further downsizing of rental fleets, and the doubling of delinquencies and repossessions of vehicles. So that will put downward pressure on off-lease vehicles. But because there's such a shortage of inventory that's out there, a lot of these off-lease vehicles go to a grounding dealer, and many of them are scooped up right then and there by the grounding dealer and never make it to auction. So that takes a bit of the pressure off of the inventory that comes in to the auction or wholesale marketplace. Another metric that fleets use to gauge the efficacy of their remarketing programs is the days to sale metric. From the time a vehicle comes out of service, how many days elapse in order for it to be sold at auction. And what's happening is days of sale are being impacted, and that's primarily because there's a shortage of truck drivers and a shortage of trucks in the marketplace. As a result of the pandemic, when we had the economic shutdown, a lot of these smaller transportation companies that might specialize in moving vehicles between resale venues, they went out of business, or they've pivoted and went into other business, say, hauling lumber instead of hauling cars. The other aspect is a lot of these companies still are having trouble getting drivers. Now, this isn't nothing new. There's been an ongoing driver shortage for as long as I remember in the industry. But now it's even more acute because going back to what we've mentioned in other things, these drivers are actually finding, because of the government stimulus monies, that they're making more money by remaining on unemployment than they would returning as drivers. But that may change in the coming months. Nonetheless, there's a strong demand for trucking. It's outpacing the capacity within the industry, and that's having a tendency to drive up transportation costs. But nonetheless, things are good in the wholesale used vehicle market, and we hope that they continue for the foreseeable future. So with that concludes my State of the Industry presentation for the week of August 24th, and I'd like to thank you for listening.